It's the first Chris and Company of 2025. Welcome into, it's not some revamped version, but welcome into a new year of Chris and Company content. I hope everyone had a very safe, happy, and healthy holiday. We are going to jump into our interview here with Steve and Izzo in a little bit, and I just realized, I don't think it'll be super. Well, I don't know. It might be. The Trey Burke photo in the background might not be a great look for me. But covering it up, I think would probably look even dumber. But Steven Izzo, obviously, former Michigan State basketball player, son of a current Michigan State basketball coach and all-time great college basketball coach. Tom Izzo will be joining the show. Known of Steven since he was very young. Known him on a personal level for I think the first time I ever interacted with him was as an adult was at the state championship football game in 2019 between Lansing Catholic and I think was it Almont they played? I should know this. Yeah, I think it was. Well, whatever. It's Lansing Catholic won. That's all that matters. But we're gonna dive into his journey and obviously, pretty incredible life story, as well as his time at Michigan State. He was a 5-year player at Michigan State. Always interesting stories coming out of Tom Izzo's program. So really looking forward to that. But before we jump into the interview, just want to say, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get those watch hours up. But obviously, so much of our audience comes in audio form, and you can find this podcast in audio form on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. And if you're watching this and saying, "Look, this is good content from this Castellani guy," it's too bad there's not a website for all his content. Oh my God, you're in luck because there is. CastellaniContent.com. You go there, you'll find literally everything you need that Austin and I create. Post-game videos, I'll say this, Chris and Company vlogs. We are going to be starting a series this week, I believe, called First Watch, where I watch and review popular films for the very first time. I think I said we're going to start with Requiem for a Dream, but I'm going to switch it up. I think we're going to start with Jaws. I'm going to try to get that to Austin at some point later this week. If it has to come next week, it'll come next week. It's fine. But yeah, just throwing that out there. Yeah. Anything else that we gotta cross or cover? I don't believe so. Yeah. I don't want to keep you guys waiting anymore. It's 2025. Let's get to our first interview of the year. And this one is with Steven Izzo. Steven Izzo joining the program today. I was thinking beforehand, like as an ultimate troll move, I was thinking about making this entire interview just about Nick Olson and just seeing if anybody picked up on it. Nick Olson, a mutual friend of ours from Lansing Catholic. But obviously, no, happy to have you on the show today. How you doing, man?
Good, you?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's obviously been kind of a crazy time, but happy to turn the page onto a new year. And honestly, the first thing I wanted to ask you is your family in some capacity has been in the spotlight for so long, and you were a part of the program as a player for 5 years. I guess just in the post Michigan State career, what have you been up to? What's kind of the life of Steven Izzo look like right now?
Yeah, so I just got a new job. I'm working with Meyer and doing the LPGA Classic out there, and then get to help out with some other golf leagues and do things with that. So that's been exciting. But yeah, it's still in the area, so try to get to as many practices as possible, and just going to all the games and watching on TV now, which is different, kind of weird. But no, it's still very much well around the program, and probably always going to be. So still enjoying the aspect of being able to go to practices and games and hang out with the guys.
I wasn't planning on asking this, but since you brought up golf, I've seen so many passionate opinions about this. What are your thoughts on this Live Tour? Just because I know very little about golf, and people are passionate about this big divide between them. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I don't know much about it.
Me neither.
I saw that they're going to do a tournament in Michigan, which, it's professional golf in our state, and that's pretty cool. Whether it's just like professional sports, if the Lions have a home game, that's cool as well. Doesn't matter if you're a Lions fan or a Packer fan. It's still cool that it's in your state. You might not like it because of whatever team you root for, but as a state, you kind of got to cheer on your state.
For sure. And you, like you said, you've always kind of been around the program. You'll always kind of be around the program. But having been through the kind of 5-year grind as a player, do you find yourself missing it at any point? Did it kind of feel like, yeah, it was ready to take that next step?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely miss hanging out with the guys and being in the locker room and, just being always so busy and having that aspect of like the team. Obviously at work, I have a team as well, but I do miss that. And then, there's some days where you're like, well, I miss practice, but I don't miss running around like all day or whatever. So like I like going to practice now and I enjoy it more probably because I don't get to do it every day.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be running. I kind of like where I'm sitting on the sideline and I'm getting to, just view it and not have to, do the sprints or anything like that.
Do you still, like, in your spare time, like to get out and play?
Yeah, so I play a lot. My dad's staff, they do runs with just each other. But now I'm on the old guys team, so I play with the assistants. It's me and the assistants versus our, 20-year-old managers, which has been cool. And yeah, staff wins a lot more games than the managers.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But no, it's cool. We get some runs in and obviously just get cardio in and exercise. So that was cool over Christmas break. We did that a lot.
That's dope.
And we do series of 7 every day. So
nice.
That was cool.
That's good. Yeah, it's good to stay with it. I mean, it's weird how that works. Some people, after they're done with a sport, like, just don't even pay attention to it. It's strange how, like Derek Jeter, I remember saying, like, it didn't watch baseball the first 2 years after he retired. It's like, man, it's kind of strange, like, if you're passionate about it. But, going back to just kind of your time as a player there, because your first year and a half, sadly, was kind of marred by, like, what ended up being COVID, right? And the cancellations and everything. And while we were on the side of it, of hearing it through the press, I was at Cassius's last home game, which I swear, like, might have been the last big public event in East Lansing before COVID, like, legitimately.
Yeah,
it was.
I think it was on a Friday, and on a, what do you call it, Sunday, the tournament was canceled.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was something like that. So were you guys, because you weren't playing the first day, obviously, because you had won a share of the Big Ten, but where were you when you found out that news that the tournament had been canceled, and how did you find out?
Yeah, so it was crazy. So we had packed our bags and our stuff was in the locker room. We were going to leave the day it was canceled for the tournament. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of practicing. And, I mean, I was always in tune with my dad's staff. Like, I wasn't always like, I didn't have to have I had to have my mind on practice, but I could also, like, talk about different things. Mm-hmm. And someone came up, like one of our interns or something, and was like, dude, I think they're going to cancel the Big Ten tournament. And I was like, no, you're crazy. Like, they won't do that. And so, sure enough, they canceled the Big Ten tournament. I'm like, well, they're not going to cancel the NCAA tournament. So we still practice, and we're like, all right, well, we're going to practice for the NCAA tournament because who knows? Right. And so I remember I came home, and my dad had got a phone call because he's on, like, the head of the committees of the coaches committee or whatnot. And he's like, they're canceling the NCAA tournament. And I remember I was pissed because I was like, like, we're really good. Like, this is ridiculous. And then didn't know anything about COVID at the time. And then, it was just like so fresh where I'm like, for like, what? Like, we're canceling a tournament? Like, this is nuts. And then I remember we went to the meeting, and it was a lot of weird emotions because, I mean, I was a freshman, so I still have 4 more years to do whatever. And then, like, the seniors are all, like, obviously heartbroken, and it was just a lot of confusion. And then I remember for, like, a few months, I'm like, we're gonna play this tournament. Yeah. There's no way they're just gonna cancel it. And sure enough, we never went back. So yeah, it was a crazy, like, probably 24 hours, if not like 10 hours, where it was like, oh yeah, well, we'll just cancel the Big Ten and, we'll go to the NCAA tournament. And it was like, no, they're going to cancel the NCAA tournament. And then it was like, this is nuts. Like, this is crazy.
It's insane. And it's crazy that it's been 5 years now, but, like, it's insane how little everyone knew at the time. Because even I remember, like, we canceled the Big Ten tournament, and in a matter of hours, it went from, okay, well, they'll just play the NCAA tournament next week to no, like, everything is out. And I even remember, like, they were in the middle of spring training, and Rob Manfred, the commissioner, was like, for baseball, was like, oh, we still plan on playing 162 games. And it's like people didn't know like the extent of this at all. I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but in terms of like the mood in the locker room and as far as how the team was feeling, because you're right, the team had finished strong. They'd won a share of the Big Ten. You had a really good senior class. Did you get the impression it was more like sadness or disappointment in the locker room, and the fact that like you weren't there's just something about not having the opportunity to finish the job. Like if you would have gone there, and I don't think you would have, but had you have gone there and gotten bounced early, that's almost easier to live with than not knowing what the end result could have been. So like, what was kind of the mood like?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it was like, all right, well, we had a very good shot at winning it. We were favored by Vegas. We were favored by, everyone you name it. Like it was pretty unanimous that we were favored. And then I remember, I'm like, this is so dumb. And then I remember they're like, oh, we'll just do a 2K simulation. And then it's like, all right, well, Michigan State wins a 2K simulation. And then they're like, we're going to do a bracket simulation. And Michigan State wins that. I'm like, dude, we didn't even get to play this. Like, I feel like I just got cheated out. And then I was like, we should just hang a banner, honestly. But I remember I actually have a screenshot on my phone of the notification saying that we won the simulation. That was like not the 2K one, but the online one. I remember people talking about the 2K one, and I actually have a screenshot of the first hey, stay at home warning. And I was like, I'm going to screenshot this because this should be important. And sure enough, it's like probably one of the craziest. Like, it's like literally stay at home, don't leave. It's like, when are we ever getting that again? Who knows?
Yeah, I know. It's like I said, in 5 years removed, like it is crazy that happened at all. Like just thinking about it, was like the entire world stopped for it. And as a fan, I felt a million different emotions because it's like, I wanted to see how your guys' journey ended. I wanted to watch Cassius's final tournament, but it was like, just as a fan, as a sports fan, it's like, dude, this sucks. Like you realize how imperative and how important sports are to your life when you're going months on end, like watching old games and stuff. It's like, man, I just not be able to see it was crazy. Yeah, obviously disappointing, but you're I think it was about a year ago. Brendan Quinn for The Athletic, who for my money is as good a writer as there is in the state of Michigan, wrote a really well done piece about your life and your relationship with your parents, and it kind of spread like wildfire. It was one of the better things I'd read in a long time. Was it Brendan who approached your family about potentially writing something like that? Because it had been alluded to, but it was probably the most open that I'd seen your family be about your life and your situation.
Yeah, so BQ has a good relationship with my dad, and they brought it up. Not my dad. BQ had brought it up to our SID, and so I was like, all right, I'll talk to him. Like, we'll figure it out. So I remember BQ. We went into this separate room, like it was a meeting room next to my dad's office, and he's like, look, I want to write this story about your adoption and everything about that, and I don't want to be invasive. I want you to, I'm not going to ask you questions. I just want you to talk. So I was like, all right, there's no way this guy's not going to ask me questions, like whatever. So I was like, look, well, and then the promise he made to me, he's like, I'm going to write the story. Well, if you're interested, I'll interview you. I'll write the story. He's like, I could spend 2 years writing the story. And if you said you didn't want it out, I wouldn't put it out. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. That would be a waste of your time. And so I remember we had met like a couple times a week for like months. And we just sit down and he would ask like one question. And then it would just like open, like I would just start talking. And then he never like elaborated on questions and never was like diving into like deeper. I guess he wasn't trying to be like pushy on anything. And I just kind of talked to him, and I view him more as a friend than I view him as like, the media or anything like that. Like I felt comfortable being open with him, and to this day, like he still keeps in touch with me. So, but no, yeah, he wrote an awesome piece, and obviously I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it. I've had people email me, professors at Michigan State, and tell me about their journey. So that's cool, and to have that impact and I have a lot of parents that have adopted children that reach
Mhm.
out to me, and just ask me questions. And they're like, "Would you be willing to talk to my kid eventually?" Or even some people in East Lansing have printed the like I had a box, like I think they talked about it. So I had a box with all the information in, and parents said that they printed out the story and put it in their kid's box for one day when they are interested in reading that. And I was like, yeah, you can throw my email in there, and if they want to reach out to that, 20 years down the road, let me know. So, yeah, a lot of great feedback, and it was a cool story.
It was fantastic. And would you have been as inclined or as enthusiastic about saying yes had it have been somebody else writing the article?
I think I would have had to be really close with them. There was a few that, kind of pop in my head of like, sorry, who I feel close enough with, and who I can trust. But also, it goes by, like, I don't want to be like, oh, it goes by reach, but like BQ has a huge reach. Like,
Yeah.
that story was in the New York Times, so it made sense to do it with him, and talk to him about it because I had known him previously before. But then I remember I get a phone call from someone, and they're like, "Hey, this story's in the New York Times today," and I'm like, "Well, can you go buy me a copy? Because we don't get the New York, like I don't get the newspaper,
Yeah.
and I don't have access to the New York Times." So sure enough, our sports science guy that works for my dad, his mom was like in New York for lacrosse tournament. So I call her. I'm like, "Hey, can you buy me a thing in the New York Times?" She went to 7 different stores. And she bought out like 12 copies, and it was like she didn't see them at all. And the last store she went to, she's like, "This is insane." She found 12. She just bought them all. She's like,
Nice.
"They're coming home with me." So it was cool.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you still have it somewhere?
Yes, they're all still in the same box that I was.
Are they right on? In terms of just going back to the personal journey for a little bit, I'm kind of curious about this. At what point in your life did you realize like that your dad had a really cool job? That it wasn't just kind of your average everyday normal thing. Like he was known around Lansing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of like obviously growing up, I don't know any different. And just people always obviously want to take pictures of them, or just be around him, or give them their story that doesn't make any sense. Like, "Oh, this is where I met you." It's like, like, stop. But yeah, I mean, I just growing up, I've always grown up with a famous dad, and so I don't know any different. But I feel like he's very humble. We still go grocery shopping. We're not like, "Oh, we can't do that." Like,
Mhm.
we're so involved in the public that people will come up and say hi to us, but it's not like yes, he has to take pictures and obviously do that stuff. But I think people see us so much in the public where they're like, "Oh, it's just a regular guy. Like, he's just a little more well known or a little more famous." But as I got older, like being able to go to whatever game or hang out with people, obviously pretty cool. And I remember 2 years ago we met Matthew McConaughey. Was like, "I want to meet Coach Izzo. We're at a Warriors game." It's like, why does this guy want to meet my dad? Like, I want to meet that guy. Like, this is crazy. But yeah, there's just a lot of instances of coaches or maybe some famous people that want to meet my dad because they respect my dad so much. And I'm like, this guy coaches in the NFL. Like, he's a big deal. And like, my family is as pumped to meet. So I went to a Bucks game a few years ago, and Matt LaFleur was in the back.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Coach, I really want to meet you." But his kids were dying to meet my dad. And I was like dying to meet him. And so it was like funny because they were starstruck about meeting my dad. And I was like, this guy's awesome. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. And to this day, my dad and him have a good relationship and, are texting weekly. Man, texting weekly, like, good luck and all that stuff. So pretty cool to, be able to know these people on a personal level and kind of be able to interact with them and, you live the same lifestyle, or they live the same lifestyle as their kids do, as I do. So it's cool to, have that connection with coaches' kids and be able to kind of bounce things off. Like, hey, it's like, I say that coaches' families, their lives are based off wins and losses. And so if you don't win, you're going to get fired. And if you win, like, you keep your job. And I don't think people understand. I think people do understand the stress, but the stress is way different when you're a coach's kid or a coach's wife. And so being able to, like, communicate with other coaches' kids and have friendships with them is cool. And, you can bounce different things or be supportive after a big win or a big loss. And, it's just a cool group to be a part of, I guess. And obviously always going to try to give back to other people and let them know that you care.
And the longevity of it is so cool too, in the sense that, and I've brought it up before, I'll probably bring it up again by the end of this episode, but like, I was born in 95. I only know one Michigan State basketball coach. Yeah. Like a lot of this, like there's something that's so unique about that. And I'll bring it up at the end of this episode as well. But like it's going to be weird when it's somebody else on the sidelines. Like, do you get that vibe to, like, how do you think you'll, and who knows? I mean, you got a really good team this year, but like, how do you think you'll adjust when the day comes in which he finally says, I'm going to take a step back and let somebody else run this thing?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think that I'm so tied with the university that, I'll always be involved, whether my dad's a coach, not a coach, whatever it may be. I think I'm obviously played there for 5 years, but I think the uniqueness of it, of my dad's built a relationship with all the donors and other coaches and everything else. But what people don't necessarily realize is when my dad can't make it to an event, I'm sent in his place because I've had to speak at events before in place of my dad, not knowing. I'm like, so what was it? My dad was like, Steven, you got to go to this thing. I'm like, perfect. Am I giving a speech? He's like, no speech. Like, you're good. Get to the thing. The guy tells me I'm not speaking. I end up having to speak. I'm like, what is going on? This guy said I wasn't speaking. But just the uniqueness of being able to do that and, being trusted, as well as being well known enough to be able to do that, is pretty cool. And I think cements my spot with the university and being able to give back and continuously give back as I get older.
I mean, you've been around the program, you've been around your dad for so long. Do you feel like you gained a greater appreciation having played under him for 5 years? Or do you feel like you already had a pretty, like, solid idea of, like, what his day-to-day was like?
Yeah, I mean, I always went to practice as a young kid and was always involved. But, when you're doing the workouts and doing the lifts and all that stuff in the summer, I have a much better appreciation, even though I was there and saw it all. My appreciation definitely got better for, the players, the other staff, my dad. Just as, like, I saw how hard he worked, or he wasn't at home all the time. So you kind of notice, like, how busy he was. But in the grand scheme of things, I think I had a better appreciation, but also had a pretty solid idea of what was going on the daily basis.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you were so close to it for so long. I feel like just kind of being on the bench was like the next logical, like, extension of what you'd already seen so far up in up to that point in your life. I think that one very unique thing about your dad is the fact that he is as, like, probably media accessible as almost any coach, at least in the Big Ten, probably in the country. And I think there is a personal connection that many people have, to him and to the program, which is great. It's understandable. What's one thing that you feel like people might get wrong about either him as a coach or him as a human being?
I think people think, like, I mean, we can just go right to this. It was my senior year of high school. Aaron Henry's playing the NCAA tournament game.
I didn't want to bring it up. I figured that would come up at some point in this interview.
Good. Yeah. He grabbed Aaron Henry or pointed at him, whatever you want it to be, but everyone made it a big deal. And then, like, then 2 years later, Gabe Brown's like, it was nothing. Mm-hmm. And, like, I had no clue. We get in the locker room and it's like everyone's friends. Like, we're all, no one cares about that. Like, the Henny thing, dumb. Like, But like out of all the players, they always say, you know what, like people come to Michigan State for a reason. Like you're going to get coached like that. If you don't get coached like that, it's a disservice that my dad's doing to you. Um, so I think all the people that come to Michigan State, as well as people that don't come to Michigan State but go to other schools, they all have an appreciation for my dad. And my dad always gives, even if they don't come to Michigan State, like my dad still texts people.
Yeah.
I don't have to get into names, but he's like texting guys like, hey, good game, or always chatting with guys. I mean, you saw Devin Booker wearing Michigan State shoes. Like,
Yeah.
There's a relationship that he builds with the guys, and he's not going to just like cut them off because they don't come to Michigan State. Like, he's always going to keep that relationship up. And I remember this is like one of the cooler stories that guys have shared with me, but there's my dad. Me and my dad, we try to see every player that's in the NBA that played at Michigan State at least once a year. Definitely making a playoff game, but try to do the regular season. But regular season is usually hard, but playoff game, we're at one of every player's playoff game. And I remember going to a game, and one of the players for a different, not for the, what do they call it? A Michigan State guy was on a team, and players on that team were like, my college coach has never come to one of my games.
Oh, wow.
And they're like jealous that my dad cares that much, but they also are like, it's pretty cool that like he has a relationship with you that much and he cares about you that much. Like my college coach might not call me, or my college coach doesn't come to my NBA games. Like it's just one of those things where it's like my dad cares so much about keeping those relationships, and those are basically they're his sons for life. Like they're basically my brothers for the rest of my life. Like they're people I can go to at any moment and talk to. And that's one of the things that it makes it all worth it, where I'm like, oh, well, I didn't get to see him all the time. But that makes it worth it because his players are going to treat me the same way. No matter, like they're going to treat me as if they're my older brother every single time. And I still get text messages from guys from not even guys that lived, or when I was living, or what do you call it? When they were playing, I was not born. And I still get like happy birthday text messages from, or phone calls, or they're always asking me what's going on in my life and stuff like that. So they're keeping a relationship with me because my dad's kept a relationship with them so much. And that's the coolest thing, is just how much he's given back to guys, even guys that haven't come to Michigan State. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like that networking is a big reason why you have people from so many different parts of the country who know who he is and want to interact with him. Like there is that general respect. And it's an interesting point that you bring up about him going to so many different players' games. It helps to put that he's put so many different guys in the league. I mean, over the last almost 30 years at this point. But I'm curious that he's. You guys wear your hearts on your sleeve, which is always great, and you're emotional people, which I love. Has there been a time where you felt like it was difficult, and maybe this is always the case with a coach, but where you felt like it was difficult for your dad not to bring work home with him, where you felt like the frustration that he felt for the team may have carried over into things that were going on in normal life?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, he never brought work home. I can recount like one instance where he was mad about a game. I just got in one of those like Segway things, like the two-wheel things. I remember riding it around, and he was mad about the game. He's like, "Oh, what do you call it? You want to have fun after a loss?" And I'm like, "What? Like I'm 10." Like, no more Segway. And I'm like, "Got it, no more Segway." But yeah, he never brought work home with him, and I feel like growing up, like I literally went to every practice. Like after school every day, I went to practice because I liked being around the guys and I liked being around the team. And that was one way my dad might not be home. You know how to guarantee time? Go to him. So I remember going to practice and, sitting around, and it's weird. Like I love the art of coaching. I love coaching. I want to be a part of basketball, but I also want to have like somewhat of a regular schedule, or like just try to see it out. Like obviously, I feel like I could get into sports whenever I want, but I want to just try something different and, not just do the casual footsteps of, going into my dad's profession. But I remember in high school and maybe not middle school, but high school, he would ask questions, and But what do you think? And then I tell him what I think, and be like, wow, like you are paying kind of crazy attention to detail. And I remember in high school, this was like just one example, but I remember he went into a meeting and he was like, I walked in or something, and everyone's kind of sitting around, and he's like, who do you think should be the 5 starters? I was like, I think this from here to here should be the 5 starters. I had no communication with him before. And his list was exactly my list, and no one else had the same list as us. So I just like, I don't know, obviously knowing him and kind of sticking with his tendencies and watching it so closely, you kind of pick up on that stuff. But yeah, just like cool instances of kind of taking his profession and keeping it in my life and stuff like that.
Yeah. And obviously it was always fun for the 5 years you were there, seeing you get into the game and seeing you had scored a few points. You made a few free throws.
Exhibition games. They don't. Joey Hauser says they don't count. So.
Okay, fair enough. But you did officially get in the scorebook. It was actually I was in a hotel room in Detroit because it was the day of I think the Lions-Rams game. I could be wrong. It might have been Lions-Bucks, but one of their home playoff games. Watching the very end because my producer's a big Spartan fan. Watching you score, and that was awesome. And it's I guess throughout your time there, did you feel a certain sense of? Did you put a certain amount of pressure on yourself to be like, dude, I got to get at least one before I'm out of here?
I don't necessarily know if I put pressure on myself, but I'm like, time's ticking, man. Like I don't know how many opportunities I'm going to get. So I definitely feel like I had more pressure from. Not myself, but like when the fans are cheering, it's like, man, all they want is me to score. And like, I have not lived up to that at all. So yeah, I think just like the fans put pressure on me to score. But I think that it never really bothered me. Like I was like, if I score, I score. If I don't score, like I think Giannis says it best. He's like, is it failure if you don't win a championship every year? Like all that stuff. But I think the big thing for me was like, if I base my career on scoring, I'm never going to be happy. Like I'm not going to average 40 points. And
right.
Yeah. Like I was just like, if I score, that's an added bonus. If I don't score, I have 5 years of phenomenal memories with my dad as well as with new teammates and stories that I'll be able to share for the rest of my life. So wasn't really the biggest deal to me, but for that one bucket to go in, especially for the and one, was pretty cool. My whole philosophy on if I ever did score was I was going to score and then foul person right on the inbound so then I could get a standing ovation right after. Maybe sub myself out.
I mean, you didn't have to worry, but you got one anyway because you got the and one. You stopped that. I mean, you actually went above and beyond that little expectation. But dude, I love that little anecdote there. That's so funny. But it's one thing that's so cool about sports. Like sports are so defined, like in many ways by moments more so than even sometimes the entirety of the performance. Like I was bringing it up with the Tigers. Like Don Kelly was like a nothing player, but he's like half of Tigers fans' favorite player because he had like 2 big moments. It's like that was as loud as Breslin had been in a minute, and it was really cool to see you kind of cross him up. Just going back, one more thing about your dad because you did bring up the Giannis quote about is there failure in sports if you don't have a championship? Does it? I've been watching college basketball a long time. I've been following the Big Ten for a long time, and I know how insanely difficult it is to get to the second weekend, let alone the third. And then you start, especially when it comes to coaches, you start to get to the conversation about legacy and shit like that. Does it bother you, like where people put your dad in terms of all-time great coaches because he only, and I use air quotes, has one championship?
I don't know if it bugs me. I guess I find it disrespectful in a way because it is hard to make Final Four or make a deep run. And I remember the stat in 2015 was we had made it to the Final Four. 2015, we were 7th seed. And someone came out with a stat and posted it, and it was like, Tom Izzo has a better chance at making it to a Final Four than losing in the first and second round.
Wow. Yeah.
And pretty impressive stat.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I think that people take the Final Fours for granted and Michigan State people, whoever it may be, general public, Michigan State people, I think people don't realize how hard it is to have success. And there's very few schools that have more than one national championship let alone coaches that have more than one. So it is one of those things where, yes, how awesome would it be if, because I wasn't born yet, how awesome would it be if I got to witness that? That would be insane. No one would probably see me for a month. I'd be going crazy. But yeah, I mean, if he gets another one, he gets another one. If he doesn't, I still think, obviously a hell of a career. He's got over 700 wins, close to that Bobby Knight record of most Big Ten regular season wins, and then past Big Ten coaches wins. Like, there's so many things that he has put in the record books that I think are so cool. And like you said, like, sports is all history based, and the stories behind it. And I think that I'm going to have stories for, many, many lifetimes that I can pass on, and hopefully people are talking about 200 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if college sports are still a thing.
Yeah, assuming the meteor hasn't hit us yet, but it's an interesting thing because, like, it's not just the Final Four runs, which are incredible, but, like, you guys have made the tournament for 25 years in a row, man. Like, there's really good coaches. Like, one that like Beeline was an excellent coach. They missed the tournament a few times at Michigan. Like, that level of consistency. It's one of those, that Office quote of, like, that you got to know when you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. Like, I'm telling you, and it's not to say that Michigan State basketball won't live on, because it will. It's not to say that they won't have more success, but they will. But the idea of going 2+ decades, like, with the tournament as an expectation is crazy. And yeah, I mean, we could spend an hour in terms of, like, the psychoanalyzing of how we talk about championships and how they stack up to other coaches. We do it with football, we do it with players, we do it with coaches. It gets kind of crazy, but, like, I am certain, like, having watched Michigan State basketball in my lifetime, like, there's going to be few guys that I've seen who are better. We can get into the semantics of it and the rankings of it, but it's kind of irrelevant at that point. Just want to ask a few general questions about college basketball, because I had Nick Baumgartner on a few weeks ago, and he talked about how he misses covering the college basketball beat because there's a certain, like, intimacy to the sport and the intensity that comes with the arenas and the traditions. And the Big Ten obviously is there's as much tradition in that conference as anywhere outside of Breslin, which you obviously had the advantage of having that be your home base. What's the toughest Big Ten environment that you had to go to as a player?
Ooh, toughest? Nebraska, their fans just show up. Like, they could be...
I've heard that too. Yeah.
They could not be very good, and their fans are showing up. And if they're very good, their fans are showing up. Like, it's crazy. I think my favorite place to play, just with the history of it, is Minnesota.
Okay.
The raised floor.
Yeah.
The barn's super old. There's a lot of history in it. They haven't changed it. I love Minnesota. I just think it's one of the cooler arenas. Trying to think of some other. Nebraska's just nuts. Like, it's just loud. Seton Hall was crazy. We played there my freshman year.
Yeah, that was
Miles Powell.
Yeah, great game. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. But yeah, there's every Big Ten place has its own uniqueness to it, where it's like, there's history in all those arenas, whether you like it or not. Kind of with the backstage access, I guess, that you get as a player, like, you can kind of walk around and no one's there. So it's like your own building for, like, a couple hours at a time. And just, like, seeing different things and kind of walking where different tunnels are. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like, wow, this is nuts. Like, I don't want to say, like, Chrysler's cool, but, like,
it's good facility. It's good facility. Yeah.
It's a little darker. But but like their tunnel, like, okay, like, they got some cool pictures on the side of the tunnel, or like history that they have going down it. It's like, as much as they're my rivals, like, yes, I can admit that they have a cool setup. Like,
yeah, and it didn't used to be that way. Like, 15 years ago, man. Like, I don't want to disparage them, but it was basically a dump. Like, it took them a long time. And it kind of coincided with them getting good. Like, it was right around that 2011, 2012, and like, we got to upgrade this thing. But yeah, it looks good now. But for a long time, it's kind of whatever. I want to ask just one thing that is talked about, and it's like this with all fan bases, but I think especially with the style of basketball that has been successful for Michigan State during your dad's tenure, and the way that he coaches and the way that he is on the sidelines. And I don't want to put words in his mouth necessarily, but what do you feel like his stance is on the current state of officiating in the Big Ten? Do you feel like games are called differently than they used to be, or is it just kind of a matter of feeling out the refs and playing the game, on a game-by-game basis?
I haven't really noticed it too much. Like, I haven't paid too much attention to it. They're all Big Ten refs that I had for 5 years where I'm just like, it feels like the exact same. Like, and just everything's just a blur. But no, I don't have anything negative to say about them. Like, I feel like it's been pretty good. I don't know if there's been instances where it has been really bad or not, but I feel like it's been pretty, even in all games. You're always, every ref's gonna it's like, it just goes down to the whole thing. Like, at the end of the day, the refs live a normal life and they're all humans.
Yes.
So yes. And we've all are doing life for the first time. So it's like, all right, well, people make mistakes. Like, all right, they missed a call. Like, I can't fault them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is their job. But to go crazy about it and blast them on social media, I'm like, that's absurd. It doesn't need to happen. It's one of those things where it's I don't notice any different.
The way that I always look at this stuff is, and it's like this with referees across all sports, is if you are playing in a game where there's a bad call at the end, the amount of things that you could have done differently to make sure that call didn't have the impact that it had, to me, it's kind of everything kind of evens out. I am kind of a believer in the sports gods in that capacity. But it's tougher now because of social media that we have access to replays in slow motion that we didn't have in the 80s. I had a guy on here. It was a baseball conversation a few months ago where if you watch baseball games from the 80s and 90s, the umpires kind of sucked, but just they didn't have social media. So they would miss bad on pitches. They would call strikes on pitches that were a foot off the plate. And they're better now. It's just that now you have umpire scorecards and replay and social media, which can analyze these things, until the end of time. So it's definitely, I think the reason it's always been interesting to me is that and I don't know how familiar you are with this. There's a conspiracy that I've heard regarding your guys' success in the tournament, which is the physical nature of some of Michigan State's best teams and the way that they dominate on the glass and the way they play defense, that games were called tighter in the Big Ten as opposed to in the tournament, which is why you guys had a lot of success in the tournament, is that not as many people were getting into foul trouble. You were allowed to be more aggressive. I don't know how true that is. I'm sure at some point someone on Reddit can break that down, but that was one thing I heard in the last few years. I'm like, okay, I kind of see that.
I think just the tougher team, tougher teams can have more success. Just point blank in all sports. If you're more aggressive, you're probably going to do better. But it's also because you're being more aggressive than the other team and you're tougher than them. One of the things that popped in my head when you were talking was when you said something along the lines of, officials making a bad call at the end of the game. How I view things now, I've kind of always taken this approach, but it's if they didn't make that call, we win the game. And it's all right, well, if you don't miss 30 shots, we also win the game. So to put blame on one call is nuts to me. There's some where I'm just you just can't make that call.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. I've reffed at my dad's camp for years, probably 10 years. Probably one of the worst officials, mostly because the camp is designed to everyone's kind of having fun. Yes, there's winner and loser, but if a team's up 40-20 at a summer camp, that's not cool. So will I blow some calls? All the time, no problem. But it's just if it gets down to a game-winning shot, I might as well just throw the whistle away because it's free for all at that point. You could tackle the kid and it's not getting called.
And I think in general, there is kind of a sense of that is don't allow the whistle to decide a game unless it's something egregious. And I'm with you. I remember, and it's a lot of the pain of this loss has been alleviated now. But when Michigan lost to TCU in the whatever it was, it might have been Peach Bowl. I should know this, but I think it was the Fiesta Bowl and the college football playoff. There were a number of not great calls, but I had to just fall back and be they didn't play well, man. I can't look at a team that threw 2 pick sixes and be oh, we got screwed over. It's you didn't do it. It's one of the cool things, and I guess conference expansion might add to this, though it's definitely changed, is like I love how like familiar you get with other teams in the Big Ten throughout a season and throughout a career, and that like there's kind of rivalries are not just defined by the teams, but defined more so by the coaches. In your experience, both as a player under him and as his son, who's the one Big Ten coach that maybe not was a bad guy by any means, but in terms of his game plans and the way that his teams played, you feel like drove your dad the craziest?
I mean, I just think that, yes, it's all year to year, and like,
yeah,
we were the hunted for, and still are, like, whether we like it or not. Like, in a down year, we're still the hunted. Like, everyone wants to beat up on us because of years of us beating up on other teams. Like, I get it. So I think that in the Big Ten, everyone just prepares so well, and like, you know, out of conference, you can't prepare for other teams as well. They cannot prepare for you. Like,
good point.
I hate to be like, we're very strong or like we're physical. Yes, I get we've had some not physical years lately, but like we were very physical for my dad's been the coach for, what do you call it, 30 years. We've been physical for 27. Like,
right.
Big deal. Like, teams can't prepare for that. And even at our weakest, we're probably still pretty tough. Mm-hmm. And then you know, the Big Ten, like, every school knows, like, hey, they're going to rebound. So we're not going to have people, like, on a free throw. We're not even going to go for the offensive rebound on free throw. We're just going to get back because transition is coming. So I think there's a lot of coaches that prepare the same way. And, you know, you get familiar with people and game plans and strategy and stuff like that. I don't know if there's, like, coaches that I can really depict, and I don't want it to come off where if I say a name, then people are like, oh, he doesn't. Coaches,
right? Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Yeah.
No, yeah.
No, I get it. I
think that in the Big Ten or in all conferences, whether it's SEC, wherever you want to go, I think they prepare. Like, when you know the team that you're playing and they have the same play style every single year, you're gonna understand things.
Yeah, I guess on a like just as a basketball fan, and I can't speak for anyone else, but like the early Bo Ryan teams, just because they slowed down the pace so much, were always really frustrating to me. Where it's like, man, we're like, we got to move, we got to try to score, and they're holding the ball for. This is when the shot clock was 35 seconds. Just being like, that's gotta be so tough to game plan around because you flow. Yeah, right. It's you, especially with the kind of offense that you guys run, where like you want to push the ball, you want to move, and you got a team that's literally holding onto the ball for almost the entire shot clock. It gets a little bit crazy. Last question here, man. But like in the future, do you have interest? Do you want to be a basketball coach someday?
So that's the tough part. I would like to do maybe scouting or front office work, whether that's, you know, in college. I mean, colleges are having GMs now. So, like, whether it's in college or in the NBA, I would like to, you know, be able to do that maybe one day if my passion is still in, you know, basketball and still want to be a part of that. But, like, the coaching, the X's and O's, like I'm going to be honest, like, X's and O's, I do understand them, but it's not like, oh, I'm not, like, drawing up plays. Like, I don't really care about that. Like, I'm a pick and roll guy. Like, just pick and roll, feed it, shoot it, swing it, like, all that stuff. Like, I don't just, like, sit and draw plays all day. When I was younger, I definitely did. But front office work and stuff like that, I think that would be my dream if I wanted to get back into sports or coaching and stuff like that.
I can imagine that, and I can say, I mean, coaching's hard, man. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many, a lot of pressure. There's so many different things that you have to control, and I feel like as observers, like the idea of being a scout or somebody who evaluates talent is probably like just better suited in that particular, because like I bring it up all the time with basketball, especially with baseball as well, like talent development, but that's just, it's a hard thing to define. Like, you just know somebody who's good at it, but identifying talent is, you know, is a completely different factor in that. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear. Like, it's been really cool, like, just having grown up around here, seeing you grow up. I mean, legitimately. And then obviously being, you know, you being a part of the program. And then just on a personal level, I appreciate the support you've always shown, like the stuff that I put out. Cause I mean, I say a bunch of crazy shit. You guys seem to respond to it, but, and you are officially, not to say that you weren't before, but you are officially a friend of the program, man, which means a lot for doing this. And, who knows? Look, if You guys are in a good place right now. If you make another run in March, maybe we can have you on again to talk about what would it be? Final Four number 11, 10?
9.
It would be okay, 99, 2000, 2001, 2005. Okay, yeah, 2009, 10. Well, why do I know this? 2009, 10, 15, 19. Yeah, okay, you're right. But thank you, man. Thanks for doing this. And
No problem.
yeah, hopefully we made it fun for you. And thanks for coming on, Chris and Company.
I'll say 2 things really quick. Two of my favorite memories is when we beat Duke. You produced the video in your car.
Yeah.
About my dad's legacy, and yes, people aren't going to realize we kind of go way back to when we were 5 and 6. Hanging out in the neighborhood and stuff like that. People won't realize that, but as a Michigan guy doing that was pretty cool. And obviously there's mutual respect from everyone. My dad doesn't like Michigan by all means, but he respects them. He talks about it all the time. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. And then Mike and Mike in the morning, they did I don't know which Mike it is now, but he talked about my dad and taking players that are not, number 1 draft picks and winning and going far in the tournament. So those were two of my favorite moments in terms of being able to fully take in the whole moment. Yeah. But yes, your video in your car was one of the cooler ones because of the Michigan guy.
Well, thank you. I love that because that's a deep cut, man. So that was when I was waiting tables at a restaurant in Grand Ledge. I stepped out. I was able to watch the game. I probably did more watching of the game than I did my actual job but it worked out. And then I went to my car to make that video, and that was that was when I was fat too. So I appreciate all the support, man. No, that's actually really touching, man. I appreciate that. So yeah, we'll talk again soon, man. And thanks for coming on.
Sounds good.
That was fun, man. Thanks to him for jumping on the program. I've always had an immense amount of respect for that family and what they've done to the community that I've grown up in. I mean, regardless of my allegiances, Lansing is home, and East Lansing is obviously so close to home, and the Izzos are East Lansing royalty. And the fact is, and I remember I brought this up when I interviewed Anthony Ianni, but I've known many Michigan State football coaches. I've known many Michigan basketball coaches, Michigan football coaches. In my lifetime, there's only been one MSU basketball coach, and it's Tom Izzo. And there's something to be said about longevity. There's something to be said about success. And there's something to be said about just how weird it's going to be when somebody else inevitably takes over. When he does step down, it's just going to be strange. It'll be losing the main character off of a TV show. It'll be like when Michael Scott left The Office. It's yeah, this could work, but it just it ain't right. It just feels weird. Tom Izzo is Michigan State basketball. And obviously, one of his greatest successes is the family that he's raised as well. And I appreciate Steven taking the time to do this show. He's always been very supportive of the stuff that we put out, even when he hasn't had to be. So good guy. Make sure to continue to follow his journey and follow Michigan State basketball, as we'll continue to cover them this year on All Say This and talk about a program that right now is in a pretty good place. As of the time of this recording, they are ranked 16th in the country. If you want more insight in regards to Michigan State hoops, Michigan hoops, anything that we do, go to castellanicontent.com. Everything is there. Everything from movie reviews all the way down to the post-game videos, the podcast, everything can be found at that website, castellanicontent.com. You can sign up, I believe, for a newsletter. That way you are notified every single time that we upload a piece of content to that website. So, for instance, you'd be notified today being finding out that Chris and Company has been uploaded. So all that stuff, castellanicontent.com. Obviously for this podcast, if you want to find this on visual form on YouTube, it's there. So much of our audience comes in the form of listening in audio format. You can find us there, Apple Podcasts. You can find us there on Spotify. Some interesting stuff that we got coming down the corner. Like I said, we're going to try to start the First Watch series this week, and I'm going to talk to Austin about what we're going to have in store for the I've been saying that a lot, man. I gotta stop doing that. For the Lions, the one-seeded Lions. I always got baseball in the mind. I'm sorry. The one-seeded Lions in regards to what they're going to be doing here in the postseason, because this has been an unbelievable run, and we got to try to take advantage of it. So the content show rolls on. I appreciate all of your support. Looking forward to really busting our ass here in the new year and putting out the best stuff possible. We will be back next week with another Chris and Company. We'll be back next week with another All Say This. And we might even have a little bit more content coming out this week. So stay tuned for that. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate Steven Izzo joining the program. Have a great rest of your day. Peace and happiness.